Politics and the pulpit. No thin ice, don't worry, Pat, it'll be all right. We have our national midterm elections coming up shortly, and we are all being bombarded by politics. And I imagine, I don't know, I'm just assuming that the topic of politics will come up over a lot of pulpits in this country over the next few weeks. And I'm assuming, again, I don't know, but I'm assuming that politics will be brought up in a similar fashion as the way other things are brought up over a lot of pulpits, most of the pulpits in this country. Depending upon the doctrine of whichever pulpit affirms itself to, most information that comes across the pulpit is very instructive on what to think and what to believe and how to live your life. And I'm assuming that a political message would be what and who to vote for. But I hope that we have a different message come across this pulpit. Not what to think, but just to think. And not what to believe, but on contrarily to that, to constantly question and examine your beliefs. And it's up to you to choose how you live your life. Each one of you has to handle, negotiate your own path in this thing we call life. And the topic of politics is going to be different from this pulpit. Imagine for a minute what this world would be like if these 7.5 billion people I spoke of a while ago all worked together for the good of the whole, for the greater good. Imagine what that would be like. But so many of us, all of us, get seduced away from this we consciousness, the consciousness of for the greater good, this universal consciousness. And we get clogged up and sidetracked with our me consciousness. All these tangible things that we want to see materialize in our lives. And like I said last week, when we do that, we not only stop being of benefit to the whole, we also block that energy from our source. But I think politics has a very important place in our lives. The political processes that go on in this country affect every single one of us. There are several of the members of this congregation who are very engaged and involved in political activity, and I think that's fabulous. And they're very encouraging to people to join with them in supporting this candidate or this policy or this action, or this bill, and I think that too is wonderful on a personal and individual basis. But from the pulpit, addressing politics, the message is engagement, participation. This thing called politics affects every one of us. We can complain about it, but until we participate in this process, all we do is complain. There's a quote down here, the last one, I think, on the bottom of your page. I used to say, winning is something, but participating is everything. This quote is similar to that. Winning has a value for ego, but participation has a value for life. I'm going to do a little history thing. Most of you are aware of it. But our political arena in this country has, for the last 100 years, been, let me start over and rephrase that a little bit. Beginning with, I'll say, the end of the Reconstruction period when Jim Crow started, and then with Teddy Roosevelt when he did away with the monopolies, broke up the monopolies, and started all the national parks. And then later when FDR started Social Security and unemployment and the 3 C's and made the rich people pay for it. The rich and powerful few made a long-term commitment to take over and control the politics in this country. And they've done a marvelous job. It's been a long game, and they've done a wonderful job. And the American public has pretty much, outside of voting, not participated in a like fashion, or we perhaps wouldn't be where we are right now. If there were one political issue that I think every American should be focused on, just one. It has nothing to do about parties or conservative or liberal or who can be labeled with all those labels anyway. We all are so complex and our minds are so cross-fired and our own perceptions and ideas. How can we be labeled with a half a dozen labels? But I think the key goal, political goal for every citizen of this country should be to strive for over the next 100 years, because it could quite easily take that long, and then perpetual guardians over that, is to get the money and the collusion out of our political arena. And that's only going to happen one way, folks. It's if we participate. Don't care what your views are, what your choices are. It doesn't make any difference. That's your freedom. That's your right. But we can use it or lose it, so the old saying goes. We can use our freedom. We can engage in the political process. How many of you in here, for instance, know who all of your city council members are? How many of you know who your school board is? How many of you know the names of the players on the 49ers? Right here in our local community, our politicians, our city council, they control the quality of our streets, the quality of our education. The police department works for city council. Whether or not we have a serve and protect good guy police force or a Gestapo police force is at the discretion of our city council. How many of you go to city council meetings? How many of you participate? How many of you engage? I think that our participation in something that affects all of us, like politics, our participation in something that affects all of us, like helping the needy, supporting the homeless people, supporting the refugees, when we participate with the consciousness of we, when we maintain that consciousness, there are tens of trillions of living beings that are on our side. They have our back. They're trying to do the same thing we are. Survive and live in harmony, the harmony that each of us was created in. And when we can take that collective consciousness and participate in it, in whatever fashion you choose, that's your choice. You become a breathing, living, integral part of the workings of all of the universe. And that has to do with your compassion, your relationships, your jobs, your political views, raising your children. And most of us in this room are mature. That's a good word. Like the kind of maturity that has ARP cards. The efforts that we put forth, the press participation that we put forth, may not have great effect for us. But think what an effect all of us engaging in our communities, in our political process, engaging with a we consciousness, what effect might that have for Sierra and her children and her grandchildren? Isn't that our responsibility? Yeah. Isn't this our family? Politics is just another facet of our life experience. And when we participate in that with a collective consciousness, with a we consciousness, all of a sudden, there's not much room for fear or doubt. All of a sudden, we have tens of trillions of living things right behind us. We have their energy, we have their desire for continued life, for continued harmony, for health. And when you look at it that way, when you're conscious of what each one of you possess, the collective power and energy we have right here in this little room, I challenge you to feel anything but free and unlimited. Free and unlimited. Let's stand up and sing that, knowing that we do possess that.